Welcome to the Box Score Sports Podcast.
Free agency losers. So let's start with our winners. I want you to give me one of your winners in the free agency so far in the NBA after like 48 hours.
So he has to go into the Hall of Fame somewhere, but Tobias Harris is my winner. Just, just because this guy just keeps getting paid. And I know for the Pistons, like it's not a great look, but it's not terrible because it's 2 years and you eventually have to spend your money. You probably didn't have to spend that much, but Tobias Harris just wins because for some reason he's getting 26 million, and guys that we've seen be more effective, like Derek Jones Jr. or whatever, are getting $10 million. So he goes down as a winner because he just keeps pulling it off.
Okay, Tobias Harris was not on like my top. Like I was thinking about who you might mention like first to like start off the topic, and you started with the biggest wet blanket of the signing
Well,
of the free agency.
The ones you had on your list, I was like, well, some of those would have been on mine too, but I'm like, well, you picked those ones, so I'll try to find a different one.
Okay, that's fair. I did send him a list ahead of time. I kind of hit the more obvious ones. So I agree. Tobias Harris, I think people are making a little bit too big of a deal. Like they act like the Pistons are going to do something next year. You got to understand, like the Pistons just want competent shooters around Cade Cunningham. And like Tobias Harris is a competent shooter. It raises the floor a little bit on the Pistons. That's all it does. And they had cap to spend. And I think the contract, especially like if teams get desperate and they want to unload some money with the extra cap room, towards the trade deadline or next offseason, it's only a year left on his contract after next season. So I think it's actually not that bad of a signing. However, it is funny. You are 100% right. Tobias Harris just raking in the cash season after season. But hey, if NBA's teams are willing to pay him, who can fault him?
You can't fault him at all. It's just, I know there was rumors of him going to the Pistons. It's just sometimes when you see a player that we all basically poop on half the time.
Yes, right.
And then you're like, oh, well, now he's been here like 2 for 52. And you're like, all right, well, here we go again.
That's good. No, you're right about that. Let's hit my first winner. It's a little bit more exciting. I'm going to start with the 76ers. They took a swing this season by not going after anyone in the trade deadline, going into this offseason with a ton of cap room, and they landed the biggest fish that you can land in this offseason, which was Paul George. Paul George is 34, 35-ish. He signs a 4-year deal. I think when people are looking that far out, they don't always factor in the extra money that's going to come, especially with the TV deal. I was listening to I think the Zach Lowe podcast, and Bobby Marks he's like kind of like a former GM. He said I think the cap right now is like 141, he said, and it's going to be like 190 in 4 years. So eventually, my point is Paul George contract at the end of these 4 years is not going to be as bad as what it looks like right now. It'll still be a high number for an aging player that will probably be just a catch and shoot guy, but it's not going to be that bad. But anyway, you have to try to win with Embiid. He's 31, injury problems, and really it's a seamless fit next to Maxey Embiid. It puts them in the conversation to be one of the top 4 teams in the East. And they still have I thought they had, last time I checked, I was going to look and I forgot. I'll do that while you talk. But I think they have still like 23 million in cap room. So if that's the case, it still leads them to other signings that can help them. They got Andre Drummond to back up Embiid. I think that was super important. They brought back Oubre. I'm not like a huge fan of Oubre, but he is a 3-and-D guy, a wing, a long guy. I think he'll be fine. So overall, I think one of the biggest winners is the 76ers, and that's because they got Paul George, which was the big fish in this offseason.
Yeah, they had to find a way to spend that money. They kind of, after they made the Harden trade, they played, they pushed off the extension for Maxey until this year. So they put their hopes on this offseason.
Yeah.
And it was on the line there. and I think even myself, I just assumed he was going to go back to the Clippers, that the Clippers were just trying to hardball him a little bit and then would give him what he wanted, but they win just for getting him. Again, some of these contracts still look bad in 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Even with the cap going up, you're not going to be want to pay Paul George like $58-60 million 4 years from now, but they needed to do something. And now, you have to knock on wood with health with a lot of these teams, but that's what they needed. They needed a forward, something better than Tobias Harris.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just how they fill out their roster. They bringing some of the band back. You lose Melton, that could hurt. I hate Andre Drummond, but he's at least, they've never had like a capable backup, and he can at least, stand there for 10 minutes and grab rebounds. So it's probably better than what they had. So I know they have a few like cap maneuvers they can do. I think I was listening to something today where they could like sign someone like Kenyon Martin Jr. because they need like a 4. They could pay him like 1 year, $20 million, and then use him as a trade exception. Because I think that depending on what they do with, I think it was Andre Drummond or one of their other free agents, if they use one of the exceptions, then they're hard capped at the first apron. But if they maneuver it and sign like a player to like a balloon payment, kind of like a Bruce Brown, but only 2 years, and then you trade him and you open up, because when you're over the apron, it has to be dollar for dollar or less. So you'd have a $20 million player that's not worth it, but you could dump onto a team and bring back a player. But they have to fill out their roster, as it stands right now, like Eric Gordon. Yeah. He's fine. I mean, he was okay in Phoenix, but he can play a role. But they win just by getting Paul George and, elevating the ceiling of their team.
Yeah. And where do you think, like right now, if they kind of walked in with the team they had, and we'll talk about, I think, when we get to the loser parts, but with the cap, we're starting to see some teams like not get what they're worth. Some, not teams, but players. But let's just say they go into the season where they are what's it called? Just kind of the same, fill out the. How high do you see them finishing in the East?
2 or 3.
Okay.
Assuming health. Like I think there's like a clear 4 teams in the East, because I don't really think the Pacers are as good as they were last year. So I think we'll get to the Knicks. They're on my other end of this for free agency. But they're up there with those teams. I still don't think they're in Boston's level, but regular season with health, they should be a home court team.
Yeah, okay. That's where I have them too. I think I have them 4th or 3rd or 4th right now. Okay, let's move off the 76ers. Give me another winner on your end.
I'm going to steal one of yours because
That's totally
like
fine.
an obvious one that I couldn't. The Mavericks.
Yeah.
I think getting the players they brought in, Quentin Grimes, Najee Marshall, now Klay Thompson, and basically all they gave up was 3 second-round picks.
Yeah.
Like to move those pieces around and build a team. Granted, probably a step back on defense, but offensively, we know Klay Thompson's diminished. But if you're running a pick and roll, and Klay Thompson is the weak side corner shooter or strong side corner shooter, that's hard to stop.
Yeah.
So I like what they did because they didn't give up much. Some second round picks and guys who didn't play. I think they, at least offensively, made themselves a better team, a little more versatile, and some options. If PJ Washington can't hit a shot, well, we can put in Klay Thompson now. Yeah.
So just for like with the context of Marshall, right? He shot like 38% from 3. He's a he's a good guy. So he's going to be able to replace some of the things Derrick Jones Jr. did, not all of it, but he will add some things that Derrick Jones Jr. did not add, right? Like that's one thing. You mentioned Klay Thompson. He's going to be a better shooter, maybe not as good as a defender. And then Quentin Grimes, good young player, 3-and-D guy. We'll see where he ends up, but I'm with you on that. Great. I think that Mavericks had a great off season, and if you could replace Derek Jones Jr. with those three guys, second round picks and Josh Green, it's not hurting you at all. So I think they got better, which I was kind of curious how they would, but they got better. And I think they may, they remain one of the better teams in the West. Maybe not one of the top 2 or 3 teams, but one of the better teams for sure.
Yeah, and it'll help them against some of those matchups. I don't think it makes them like a favorite or anything, but you just came off of finals watching your team not be able to score enough or get enough threes up, and now Najee Marshall's a better shooter, probably a step back defensively, especially for on guards. But I think for them, you need more guys that can get them up because everyone's paying attention to Luka.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Okay. Let me go to the Thunder. They're a winner for me as well. They got Caruso this offseason and they got Harkenstein. They re-signed 2 of their own guys on pretty good deals. So overall, I just think, if you like, well, what was the weakness of the Thunder? It was kind of like Josh Giddey being part of the starting lineup and then not having a big like a Harkenstein, and they kind of filled those 2 roles with Alex Caruso. If they want to start him, he's a better fit next to Shea. And then you have Harkenstein, which you can either it makes your lineup more versatile depending on who you're playing. Like you can have him in there towards the end of the game. He can handle bigs, but if you're playing a smaller team, you can then just have Chet in there because it's not going to hurt you to not have a big in there. So you're now more versatile this year than you were last year, adding that big, which was huge, I think, for the Thunder. So I'm going to give them a winner as well.
Yeah, it gives you a little protection if Chet doesn't improve quite enough. Like he needs to shoot the ball a little better. But
correct.
As we talked about in last year, they just couldn't physically match up. And Chet's going to take some time to get bigger. Maybe he won't. Maybe he'll just be forever slim and he won't be able to play center all the time. But they addressed the need to be a little more versatile. It might hurt them a little offensively. Hartenstein isn't. He's not going out to the corner.
Correct.
And Caruso was kind of streaky, but defensively, at the end of games, you can do the sub offense defense thing. They're going to be tough defensively. So if they match up with Minnesota now, much better matchup that you can throw Hartenstein out there where you don't have to worry about spacing. But even if you don't, you've addressed some of your perimeter defense and interior defense. And I think Hartenstein is 3 years, and one of those might be some kind of option when the contract comes out. So they didn't tie themselves to, like a 5-year deal. And
Correct.
2 years from now, when all these extensions kick in, they're going to have to make a move. And if he has 1 year left on his deal, you could probably trade him back to the Knicks.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the thing is like when expiring contracts, and it kind of goes back to the Paul George thing and if you attach assets to any expiring contract, there's always teams with a bunch of cap space that's like, hey, if you give us a first round pick, we'll take them. So if you're that desperate, that can always be the case. So I actually like that point a lot. Let's see. Anything else on the Thunder? Obviously, they're going to be tied to the progression of their young guys more so than the free agent signings, but those free agent signings fill a role. You got another winner?
Yeah, I had to scour a little because we're early in free agency, but the Magic. I came across the Magic.
Yeah,
they got KCP, and they kept the rest of their team. They've been doling out extensions. They brought back Jonathan Isaac. I think it was like 5 years, $80-something million. Again, a tradable contract. Goga Batatse, like 3 years, 22. Like they filled up some of these mid-tier contracts so that they have options if they continue to be good. But they kept their team together. It's deep. KCP fills the need because they sorely lack shooting. They probably still need like guard help, as far as a creator, but you can't solve it all. And it's not like you're going to win a title next year anyhow. They're not in that mode, but they're definitely made their team better.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And well, and I don't like, they don't have to be done, whether it's like you said, it's early in the offseason, but even throughout the play, the first half of the season, they still have a ton of assets that they can trade. especially at the trade deadline, where if they find themselves needing another shooter, which I think that's the conclusion that they will draw by the time the trade deadline comes, whether it's this offseason or throughout the first half of the season, they can trade for a shooter. So they have that. But adding KCP, he does not need the ball. That you need those connective guys in the NBA, and he's a connective guy, and he's experienced. He can be a good vet to help those young guys grow, and he's going to be like a catch and shoot 3-and-D guy, and that's what you need around Paolo and Franz. And we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think they could use another shooter, but right now, him and Suggs in the backcourt, that's going to be a really good tandem defensively on guards.
Yeah, and that's going to be their bread and butter is defense. I don't think they're going to go away from that. Which I mean, they went after Paul George, and again, that fits. Paul George has slipped defensively, but again, someone who can create and shoot is what they needed. So you bring in KCP. The contract looks big, but again, these are all like tradable deals. So in 2 years, if you someone comes available, now you have contracts, you have assets, and then get something done.
Yeah, correct. Okay. I did add another winner for me. After I sent you the outline is Victor Wembanyama. He gets a point guard next year. Chris Paul signed for like $11 million, which is pretty cheap for Chris Paul. And there is rumor right now, just so you know, not happening, but there is rumor that the Spurs are interested in Lauri Markkanen. And I'm thinking, man, if the Spurs add Markkanen to Chris Paul and Victor Wembanyama, I'm just like, that's it. They're going to win 40 games next year. I still think they'll get close because that's what Chris Paul does. Now, Chris Paul is a little older, but he is one of the most intelligent players to have played the game, no matter how you feel about him. So he'll figure it out. And I think Wembanyama is going to love playing with him to pick his brain, but he's going to set Wembanyama up all day, every day. And I think Wembanyama is going to just love playing with Chris Paul.
It'll probably take him like 10 games to get used to getting the ball where he wants it. He's going to catch the ball and be like, wow, I just got the ball on that roll perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they lack shooting. So if they got someone like Markkanen, that would be amazing for their team. But you're right. Just having a competent guard that can get things set, they haven't had that. And I know he's only been in the league 1 year, but it'd be amazing what it can do for a guy that, even though he has some handles, you can get him the ball on the move or in the right spot when he pops, will do wonders.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, any other winners for you?
That's all I had for now.
Okay, yeah, and remember, this is the first 48 hours. Big news could happen moving forward, and that could obviously change our minds. Okay, we'll move on. Let's go talk about losers. Let's go to losers. Thanks so much for watching this clip of the Box Score Sports podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to our channel. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter or X. And we'll talk to you guys real soon. See ya.